Hey, what's up, friend? My name is Matthew Dale. I am here to help you play better, sound great, and understand more. And this is going to be kind of like the second part of another video that I did where I did what is called, or what I'm calling, the player's setup. So all guitar players being able to do some basic maintenance and some setup on their guitars. But this time we are going to apply that to this weird contraption here, a Strandberg guitar. So if you've seen any of my video reviews of Strandbergs or watched any other videos where I'm playing, either this Strandberg or my original, which has the two pickups, I love these guitars. They really, really won me over when I bought my first one, my original, and then I really, really love this Fusion here. My favorite sounds in this guitar are probably Position 4, definitely, which is these two. I love the way the uncovered neck humbucker sounds, and the bridge is just a great, PAF, 59 sounding bridge pickup, and it's really even. It's really great. I can't say enough good things about this guitar. Stainless steel frets, really smooth fret edges on this model. Stays in tune incredibly well. An amazing hardware system, and the way that the bridge and the headless aspect in this stuff all down here. Can't say enough good things. Love this. But they can be definitely a different experience when doing some of these setup items on them. So there is definitely a learning curve with these. Some of them, honestly, being a little bit annoying. So I'm going to go through, do a full setup of this guitar, talk about everything that I'm doing, what gear you might need, and buckle up. It's going to be a little bit of a long one, just like the last one. So if you're the beverage-having type of person, then go ahead and grab a beverage. I've got some raw kombucha that I'm probably going to enjoy while we're doing this. Relax, sit back, and enjoy the subtle art of setting up a Strandberg guitar. A couple things that you will want to have before we get started. I really love this. This is the Music Nomad guitar setup kit. I'll have it linked in the description box below, but we've got a string action gauge on here. It has like this pick capo thing that you can use. It's got feeler gauges for the nut height and the neck relief. It's also got radius gauges. It's got everything that you really need to accurately and repeatably, which, most importantly, if you're trying to set up multiple guitars with your specifics, repeatably give you an accurate and really, really good setup. So highly recommend this. I'm going to do a little bit of Big Ben's nut sauce down here. Even though this is locked down here, I still like to have as little friction across the nut as possible. So I'm going to be using that. This is the hardware kit that came with the Strandberg. So I've got these T. Allen keys here, and these, typical hex keys or Allen keys down here. We will not need a string winder for obvious reasons, right? That's going to be pointless, but I am going to have some snips. I am going to use a capo, and this is a truss rod adjustment, but I'm actually just going to be using this for the Phillips head screwdriver on the end. And I'm also going to have just a paper towel and another just sort of rag cleaning cloth here to wipe it off. We've got some guitar polish. This is just Dunlop 65. It kind of matches the finish. You don't need to match the finish, obviously. I'm just kind of joking, but, that's fun. Lemon oil. I'm going to lemon oil the fretboard. You probably only want to do this about twice, maybe 3 times a year. And then to clean the knobs, the electronics, the connections, some Deoxit D5. If your guitar is noisy, scratchy pots, whatever, any sort of electrical issue, sometimes it can be solved very easily with some Deoxit D5, even like pedals. So if you have like a pedal board, analog pedal board, and your switches don't seem to be working, you probably don't need a new switch. You just need a clean switch. So get some Deoxit D5 in there and clean that switch out. A couple more specific things that I'm going to be using. I've got these two little Post-it strip things. I'll talk about these when I get there. Those are weird. And also, something that's going to be a bit fun for me and this might be the most useless upgrade, I don't know, but it's fun for me. This is the Strandberg brass tremolo block. So in the back of this, it's typically aluminum. However, you can buy this on their website. You can buy a brass block for hopefully a little bit more sustain and a little bit more of that vintage tone. And I'm kind of a nerd for this sort of thing, so if it makes you happy, then go for it. And I'm going to install this and see what it does for my Strandberg. So I'm going to crack open my kombucha here, and we're going to start, as we typically want to do, by removing the strings. So since this is going to be a full setup, we're going to take all the strings off. I'm going to take out the tremolo unit and, really kind of dive deep into this. Now, I'm going to use my Strandberg multi-tool for this that I have on the magnet plate on the back, just so I can loosen up these strings a little bit quicker and a little bit easier. And as we loosen this, you'll see the bridge start to go further into the body, since the springs in the back are pulling more on the bridge. Now, I'm specifically doing this Strandberg setup video with my Fusion because it's going to be the exact same process on the hardtail Strandbergs, minus the, plate and 2-point tremolo system stuff down here that we'll talk about. The intonation is all going to be the same. Truss rod, anything that has to do with anything down there. The only thing that is different about the tremolo style bridges on the Strandberg is this plate that it mounts to and all the stuff in the back. So I'm probably not going to do a separate video on my original NX because, like I said, minus this, it's all the same. All the same stuff, dropping things as I'm going on. Now, one thing that I think is kind of neat when you get to like this point when they're pretty loose, I'm going to just set that aside, is you can actually start to like unscrew 2 of these at a time, since they're all right here. I'm just going to check for slack. And if you're not terribly careful, then you can completely unscrew these tuners down here, which we don't want to do, just because we might lose these Teflon washers. The Midwest is coming out in me. We might lose these Teflon washers or something. It's just better to keep these intact. You can see this is really starting to go into the body now. That's okay. And then I'm going to take this, and we are going to... These are loose enough. I'll do the B string a little more. See, this one just came off. And that's okay. That's supposed to happen. I'm just going to screw it in just a little bit, just to get it to kind of hold in place a little bit more. And now everything is pretty well slackened. Is that a word? Drop me a comment in the space below. And now I'm just going to turn these. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And just get these out of their lock. If I just had to do a regular routine string change on the Fusion or any sort of Strandberg with a tremolo tailpiece, I wouldn't do this, since it would just, pull this back into the body. I would probably just do, I would probably just replace one string at a time. And if I was doing, a complete restring on a stop tail, like my original, then you could definitely do them all at once like this. And let me just make sure I'm not pulling these guys out. And just take these out, wind these up, get rid of all these. And then we will move on to the next step. So yeah, if I'm just doing, a routine string change, it's better to do this one at a time because the bridge is going to play a little bit nicer with you. And I'm just going to wind these up, keep them nice and coiled. And I suppose I should have done this earlier, but let's take the bar off. Don't really need the bar at this current junction. This is the exciting part of the video. Almost. There we go. We'll just set that aside. Take another sip. And now I'm going to do this. I'm going to just screw these in a little bit more, just so they don't go anywhere. I don't want to look for these. Strandberg does a really great job of having like a lot of parts for their guitars on their website, so you can find these pretty easily. But I'd rather not wait a couple days for them if I don't have to. So I'm just going to keep those in there. We're going to flip this over, and we're going to take the springs off since I'm going to be working on this bridge. And now the springs are going to be pretty loose, so I can probably just get these off. And these are also locked in place here. So I'm going to need an Allen key or a hex key, depending on which nomenclature you prefer. I'm going to just dump these out over here. It's probably off camera, but I'm going to look for the proper... Ooh, I guessed it right away. Wow, I just saved 30 seconds off this video. And I'm going to find this in here and loosen these locks up. I do like that they lock the springs in here. Not that I've ever really had any issue, but, you know, it's one of those peace of mind things. Some people do get a little bit peeved at Strandberg that they don't cover the back cavity here. But honestly, I kind of prefer it because your clothes can then mute those springs if those springs get noisy. I'm just going to put those off to the side. And they're definitely easier to work on. I mean, these are such utilitarian guitars that then a back plate on these just wouldn't really like do it for me. Wouldn't really like be a part of the ethos of this guitar. So we'll take this guy off and then that guy off. I'm going to leave the plate intact. I'm just going to inspect the ground solder joint here. A couple of mega super fans of the channel might recognize that I don't have my tremolo installed anymore. And not that I think it's a bad product. I mean, you know, if you have someone like Guthrie Govan using tremolo on, you know, many of his signature guitars, then obviously they're doing something right. But I just found it to be a little bit noisy. Apparently you could grease that and you know, put some like heavy lithium grease or something and get the noise out of it. But for me, I wasn't using it as much as I thought I would. Hence, I went ahead and I just took it off my guitar and I put the regular claw back in. So now this is the... Hey, another one came off. I think it was the same string. Let me just put this guy back on. Yeah, you can kind of see if you take all these out. That's our tuning mechanism right there. And this gives us an incredible amount of control for tuning. Like one of my most favorite things about these guitars is how well they stay in tune. It's pretty awesome. Now, a couple things with this tremolo assembly. One, it's dirty. We're gonna clean it up, but it exists on like a 2-point bridge system, and there's actually 2 notches in here. I really can't show you much because it's really hard to see, but there are 2 notches that this would potentially rest on. So you just want to be aware of that when you are putting this back in. So if I like just drop this down right here, that is, I think, bottomed out, which is good. That's kind of where I want that to be. There's also another higher one. And in order to kind of get that squared away, we're going to need to put the strings on and just, you know, make sure that it's referencing in the right place. So something just to be aware of, that there are potentially 2 resting points for this bridge system. I think there's one of them, and then down all the way, there's another one. Now, when you're doing this, if you are setting the string height, when we get to string height in action, we'll talk a little more about this, but if you're setting string height on a non-trem, you are going to do it at these individual saddles. But for this particular guitar, we're going to get the radius set up, and then I'm going to adjust the action height from the two posts up and down. So here is, I guess, the first thing that we're going to do. I'm not going to dive into the tremolo block first. I'm going to just, get a refresher here. But let's go and just wipe this off real quick, clean it up, use a rag, a little bit of the Dunlop polish, and just clean this up, do some due diligence. I'm going to try to not hit the screws too much. I mean, I still might hit them some, just in the interest of time. I mean, I know this is going to be, and you probably know by now that this is just going to be a long video. Sometimes that's okay, but if I can eliminate a little bit of the adjustment time on this, then I will. You'll probably want to do the same. And I'm just going to clean this up. This is a matte finish, so you don't really see a lot, but I do want to get all the dirt and stuff cleaned up. I'll do the back in a little bit, but let's go ahead and do this now. A little bit of lemon oil. I've really grown to like these stainless steel frets. I used to have an American Deluxe Strat that I played all through college, played the heck out of it, and it had stainless steel frets. And then I was playing a Tele with just regular frets for a while, and then my Collings 290 with regular nickel-silver frets, and then my PRSs with regular nickel-silver frets. So I didn't play on stainless steel frets for a while until I got my other Strandberg, my original NX, and getting back on to stainless steel frets was kind of a revelation. They just felt so, they felt so good. They felt really slick, and, it felt like there was a lot of positive contact being made on them. Really like the stainless steel frets. Don't tell Paul Reed Smith this, but at some point when my PRSs need a refret, I'm getting stainless steel frets put on them. Might be blasphemy for some of the hardcore PRS guys, but I'm also a hardcore PRS guy, but I like stainless steel frets. At least now I do. All right, I think while we're letting this just sort of soak in and do its thing, I'm not putting too much on it. I just want it to evenly disperse across. Then I'm going to wipe off the excess. Let's go ahead and add just a little bit of this Big Ben's nut sauce, which is the funniest name. Great marketing. I'm going to add this to the nut and just sort of disperse it in here. And then I'm just going to slurp this back up a little bit. Put the cap on. And then there is also, I keep them in here, so I don't lose them. But there's also a couple of really tiny brushes. So the red one is a little bit bigger. That's probably suitable for the E string and the A string and the D. We're starting to kind of cap out. So I'm now going to switch to the black one, which is much thinner. So I'm just going to disperse that lubricant around, and then I'm going to wipe off the excess with my paper towel. That'll work. We're going to let this dry a little bit, and then we're going to swap out. Here's the aluminum one, the Strandberg aircraft grade aluminum, yada, yada, yada. First thing before I swap it over to our brass guy, which is a lot heavier, which I think I'm going to kind of like. As much as I do like that these are super light guitars, a little bit of heft on this thing isn't going to do any harm. I think that's actually going to be quite nice. So I do want to make sure I put this in the correct way. So the Strandberg logo is going to be facing the back of the guitar, so that's how I'm going to install it there. Couple of annoying things. The first and probably the most annoying thing with this style of bridge, the Strandberg style bridge. I'm gonna have to take all these saddles off to replace this block, which means my intonation is going to be all kinds of screwed up. Now, in order to mitigate this, I am going to do this, actually. And I actually just thought of this. This is not the reason for having these, but I'm going to take these guys, and I'm going to mark the location of my intonation on the bridge here. Again, just to speed up the process. If you're doing something similar, then you might want to do this as well. But the intonation adjustment on this is always dependent on loosening this screw in here, sliding it back and forth, tightening that screw down, and then tuning back up to pitch, and then checking your intonation. So intonation adjustments on this take a while. Not my favorite thing. Now, luckily with intonation, as long as you're not changing string gauges or even brands all that often, once you get it set, you get it set. And you really don't have to worry about it again. But since we are doing a full setup and going through all the motions here, we're going to be doing an intonation adjustment. And just get this stuff a little bit more marked off. I hope I don't actually make these that much thinner for the actual purpose that I have these here for. But we will see. So now, I need this a little bit thinner. Let's do one of these. And that'll mark my high E string. Oh, good, that's perfect. All right, now, provided I don't move these and these stay where I have them, I should have a good reference for where to put these saddles back for the intonation. So let's go ahead and grab the appropriate Allen key. I know it's on the multi-tool, so I'm just going to use the multi-tool. It's the smallest one on the multi-tool. And again, these I am going to have to remove all of them. Suppose I could also title this video a complete breakdown of the entire Strandberg bridge assembly. They did rectify that issue with the current generation hardware on the Essential, the new one that just came out, which has regular frets, not fanned frets. And I don't really need to, but I'm going to try to keep these in the order they were in. That's just, my OCD kicking in. But the Essential that doesn't have the fan frets, I believe, has a screw adjustment for the intonation, which is like way better. So maybe there's an update that could be performed on the NX stuff that would allow us to do that. But I don't know. One can only dream. And there, we are off. Let me just press these down again, just so I know where my reference is. Now, once again, the multi-tool. Props to Strandberg for this, because this is a great idea. Multi-tool is loosening these guys up. A little tight. That's all right. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch gears to this guy, just to finish it off and make it a little bit faster. I will say, the machining on all this stuff is like top-notch. They really got that stuff nailed down. Okay, so there's those. way light, super light tremolo block. Now, the man's tremolo block, the brass. We're going to install this guy back, and I'm going to put these guys back in and just get them referenced, get them started. And I'm running out of space. Once again, Strandberg logo facing the back. Taking special care not to cross thread the threads here. This one feels good. Oop. Now, I mentioned this is kind of probably a novelty thing. Because the strings don't actually pass through this block. Obviously, they go in through the back of the tuners. But I guess we'll find out. I did record. Granted, it is on my older strings. These strings weren't terribly old, but they also weren't terribly new. So I did record a little sampling that we'll hear at the end of this video. And we'll see if there is a noticeable difference. But as I mentioned earlier in this video, sometimes you just got to do what makes you happy. And brass, apparently, makes me happy. This part's actually really simple. You know, it's two of these screws. I'm going to get them snugged up, and now I'm going to take this and just kind of crank on them a little bit. Just so that we all know that they are fully seated and engaged. I don't want to lose any tone or sustain from loose screws. All right, now, back to this guy. Where's my multi-tool? Here we are. Back to the annoying task of getting these guys on. Is there such thing as a perfect guitar bridge design? I don't know. I'm always reminded of the failure, I guess is a way of putting it, in the original Les Paul bridge, the trapeze bridge, on like the 52 and the 53. I don't remember when they changed it. Drop me a comment in the space below. I'm not terribly sure. I suppose I could have left these, but, you know, oh well. Hindsight, right? But I think it's kind of funny that, you know, collectors nowadays will remove the trapeze, get like an aftermarket tunematic that usually doesn't mar the finish. It's like kind of like a retrofit. I'm just going to snug these up pretty good because this is probably going to be really close to the right location. There might be a few off. But I definitely want to get these snugged up enough where we know that they're going to be close. You know, the Telly design, the 3 saddles, you couldn't really perfectly intonate the 3 saddles. And then now they have compensated ones. I really like the compensated ones because they retain that classic Telly look, but give you the ability to have much better intonation. I think the Strat is a good design. However, the vintage ones with the 6 saddles, or the 6 individual screws, sorry, weren't nearly as good as the 2-point system. But then, like, PRS perfected the 6-point system, and it's pretty killer. Now, here's something interesting. There is a spring down here that seems to have come undone. So this is odd. So I found this little spring underneath the saddle of my A-string tuner. But I just took apart the E-string tuner, and I didn't see a spring down there. And I'm kind of looking at these other ones, and I also don't see a spring on any of these. I find that odd. So what I'm going to do is just leave this tiny spring out, because I don't know the function of it, nor does it look like it's a part of any of the other things. I'm going to keep it and hang on to it in case it ends up being something important, but my assumption is it's not. Don't know if that's just some sort of mistake from manufacturing. They left some sort of spring in it, or what. I don't know. But these actually are designed to stay in place. So if I rotate this in, there is tension on it. Let me rotate it back just so I don't lose my height. All right, the low E string pushed up there and locked back in. So hopefully this is back to a similar intonation area, or at least close enough where I'm not doing a ton of guessing. And I'm just going to snug these up again. Don't get too snug. I did break one of these, as seen in my review of the original NX. So you don't want to be too hard on these. Now, I'm going to take these off, get rid of those guys. And now we are back. I'm just going to take a little rag here and just kind of shine this up a little bit. You know, polish the new brass. Actually, if nothing else, it looks sick. It looks pretty awesome down there. And it matches like the brass hardware down here. I think it should have. I think with this being more of the vintage E design, with the SSV Plus, the SSV, and the vintage Strat middle pickup, and maybe even the classics should come with this like already, because it feels good. Like it feels like it's got a good weight to it, and it looks pretty killer. It looks pretty premium, I think, on here. Anyway, this is back. It's clean enough. We've got the saddles back in place. And let me just make sure that they're all straightened out. And yeah, that looks pretty good. The string height, in this case, it's not so much the string height as it is the radius. The string, like the string radius, are set with these individual saddles, and you really only have like the adjustment is, I think, adequate enough, but not as fine-tuned as some other means of doing this. So when they're slotted in on either side. So if you rotate it 90 degrees, then or I guess 180 degrees. If you rotate it 180 degrees, that's your next level of adjustment. Might be something that you might want to consider, but last time I already kind of had this installed, it was definitely adequate enough for getting me that perfect 20-inch string radius on here. Okay, so that's back installed. Let's go ahead and just set this back in it for right now. Let's wipe up all of the excess lemon oil that didn't need to soak into our fretboard. Clean that up. Flip it around to a dry spot. Go along the edges. And now a little bit of, a little dirty, not much. I'm just going to take this cloth and wipe down that with the cloth as well, and then get this back installed. Okay, so now Here's where these are really going to be coming into play. And let me make sure that I didn't. And I totally did, but that's okay. So I'm going to just level this out because I want 2 of these. So I'm going to take like this much off of that one. And those are pretty much level now. So here's what I'm going to do. I have this mounted back where it needs to go. And let me just do this thing real quick as well. Let me grab these and just loosen these guys up to a point where... Now, I'm using 3, so I can actually tighten these guys all the way in. The ones that I'm not using. I think 5 would be overkill on a Strandberg. I have 5 in my DGT. Love it. But these I think feel really good with 3. So let me just make sure that one kind of... I don't want to get them too far out because then it's going to be a hassle to install or tighten up when it's already installed. That one's good. That one's good. And that one's good. Okay, cool. So, get this seated down. I'm going to try for that all the way sort of thing. And I'm going to get the outside 2 on first. You'll see why here in a second. I'm trying to hold it up to keep it seated. This is not exactly the most easy thing in the world. There's probably a better way to do this, but I'm not doing it that way because I'm stubborn, I guess. I might do this, actually. And those springs are at an angle, so, you kind of need it to be up and downward like that. So let me just see. This is always kind of the most painful part of this sort of thing, is getting these springs back in. You can kind of see on mine, I do have a couple of battle wounds from trying to do this with like a needle nose or something, or a screwdriver. Now, what if I hooked this first? Ooh, that's kind of tough. I have seen where you hook like a screwdriver in here and then you kind of like get it seated around there. And I don't want to adjust my claws too much because I know that they're already set there. I'll talk about when to adjust these claws at some point when we get there. But if I can get this seated up without doing that, then that would be good. Ooh, I almost had it. Okay, so there's that one. That one went in a little bit easier. I think I'm going to loosen this guy up a little bit more, and I'm going to go in from that same direction. It's really kind of locked in there. Needle nose pliers might be of some assistance in this case. Trying to be nice and gentle with that. All right, now. kind of at such a weird position. All right. Bingo. There's those two. Let's tighten them up so that I don't have to do that again. This is what I mean by this is a slow process, but I needed them to be loose so that I could get them in. Slow and steady wins the race. Okay, that one's snugged up. Let me turn this again for this guy. I don't know if you can hear it through the camera, but I can already hear the added sustain. That's just my 2 cents. Okay, those are snugged up. Let me turn this back around and just see if this is in place correctly where we want it to be. And I can kind of visually see that it is not. So you kind of have to, like, if you rock this back and forth, as per the Strandberg manual, it will automatically seat. And I think it's right there. We'll put the bar on here in a second. Let's go ahead and get the third one installed. I suppose you could do the middle one earlier in this process, but you also don't have to. Oh, I just pushed it off. Great. Now remember, I did loosen that screw, didn't I? We're going to have to loosen it a little bit more. Not that one. Let's try this now. All right. We win. Honestly, doing something like this, that's the hardest thing because it's just super annoying. And just snug that up enough where it's locked in. Let's go ahead and add some tension to this guy again. I'm just going to take the bar and just drop it in just so that we can get that leverage on it. You can kind of hear where it's sitting. It should sit right there. Now, this is where we're going to do this sort of thing. Because this is a result of this design. Since the strings are fed back here, I'm going to just tighten these up just a little bit so that I can do this. Since the strings are fed back here, and because of the distance is now greater when the springs are all the way engaged. This is really why I bought the Tremolo lock system, to make this easier, but then I just never really used it while I was playing. If I string in, say, the high E string, which is going to need the most tension brought on it to bring it up to pitch because it's the thinnest and it'll stretch the most. If I put this here and string it up here, lock it in here, as this comes forward, as all the other strings are coming up to pitch, it's going to make this go flat and flat and flat. So I'm going to have to keep turning this, tightening it, to get it to come up to pitch, but I'm going to run out of room. So if I can actually get this bridge as close to playing position or in tune position as I can, and then string it up, then we're going to be a lot closer. We're going to have a lot more play in these tuners, which is what we want for the most control. That's where these stupid things come in. I'm going to use these as tremolo blocks on the underside of the tremolo to get it to hold in place. So I am going to try this. I'm going to reach over. I'm going to pull this down just so that it's in place. And maybe I'll do it from back here. And just put one in and the other. And now this is pretty good. I would like, ideally, I'd like to see that this is flat to the body, but it's not bad. It's close enough to call it, I think. And I think what I even might do now that this is seated where it should be, you can see you kind of have to go back and forth a little bit on them too. Those are pinched in there. That's pretty good. So what I'm going to do is do this. First, I don't have my strings. I need to go get my strings. Let me get my strings, and then we'll continue on. One of the most important aspects of changing your strings is strings. So these are string joys. These are 11 to 50s. They call these the balanced medium. And if you remember watching my PRS video, I do 11 to 52 on my PRSs. But this is a fan fret multi-scale guitar. So in order for them to feel similar, I go with an 11 to 50. So the top scale length is 25 inches on the high E string, but 25 and a half inches on its Fender scale length on the low E string. So in order to compensate for that, I go with 11 to 50s. And now my PRSs and my Strandbergs feel very similar. I like that. So this is what I'm going to do. Let's get our low E. And I'm going to loosen all these guys back up so we can fit our strings in it. And let's start with the low E. Now, for the Strandberg here, I'm going to kind of just do a little bit of a bend on the end here, so that way as I feed it through, it'll kind of come up on itself. And let me just make sure that these are all extended out as much as they can be, just so I know that I have the greatest range of tuning here. And really, string tightening is what I'm more concerned about. That should be pretty good. They're just to a point where they might come off the threads. Now that'll just pop up. Oop, if I don't pull it out the other way first. And you want to make sure that you get this pretty centered. There it is. Feed it through. Snug it up. And then same sort of thing. Feed it in through down here. And I'm going to pull it fairly taut. While I snug up that guy. And fell off the saddle. Okay. There we go. And then I think on the other side, I'm going to do both the high E string and the B to kind of compensate. And same sort of deal here, where I'm just sort of bending that string up a little bit. just to kind of give me a little easier time. Get out of here, fly. This is my clean guitar. Just polish this up. New strings. I don't want to fly on it. All right. Pull this guy through. I'm going to try to be tighter with the E string. The high E string. Make sure it's on the saddle. Okay, let's do the B. Like I said, this hardware has a lot of benefits to it. I don't think it's nearly as complex as other like locking systems like Floyd Rose. But it will make setups a little bit more tedious. Get those tight, not terribly tight. If they're not staying in tune with them being locked down here, just, with a moderate amount of tightness, then there's something else going on that you need to keep in mind. So, at this stage now, I'm going to start tightening this side and this up so I can level this bridge out and then get the other ones on. I'm going to leave these long for right now, though, because I want to make sure two things. I want to make sure that these are fully locked and I don't have any strings slipping. And I'm probably actually going to pull these through a little bit more and just make sure that I have plenty of play down here on the tuners. That's definitely a real specific thing. You don't need to do that. I'm just going to. So I'm going to tighten these guys up. And I'm not even necessarily going for pitch right now. I'm going for tremolo alignment here. So I want to make sure that this is coming into level. And I can feel that tension. I'm just going to tighten up a little bit more. And now I'm going to just again make sure I got plenty of room on those. Now I'm going to put the other guys on. Let's start with the A string. Same thing, little curve. Same thing, pull it fairly tight. Get it snug. D. It's kind of rolling now. Like, this is pretty easy stuff now. Make sure it's fully seated in the back of the tuner. Get it on the saddle. Snug it up. And get this last string on. And you can probably see by now that if you didn't have the tremolo to deal with, and you just had the hardtail, this is much simpler. But if you had the hardtail, the stop tail, you wouldn't get that sweet brass tremolo block. So I'm going to tighten these up. Again, I kind of like that you can tighten up multiple of these guys at a time. Nice little benefit there. That is definitely too high for an E. So I'm going to get these back in pitch, and then I'm going to go back, I'm going to loosen up the B and E, pull those a little bit tighter, and then we'll get those guys back in pitch as well. So now, I'm roughly back in tune. Now what I'm going to do, I'm sighting this in, and I'm very level right here. If I just turn this to the side, you can see that this is pulling enough. If I depress this, my Post-its should come out. One of them did. One sticky. They are sticky notes after all. And let me get this guy sticking. Okay, so if I just, again, as per the manual, if I start rocking this back and forth, it should feel really smooth. If it's not, then there is something happening where it's not in alignment. And it should self-align as you're doing this. So right now I know that I'm in line and everything. That's good. I'm going to check to make sure that this is level. If not, if your bridge, let me hold this up so you can see it more. If your bridge isn't level or flat with the body, and I mean like, the plane here and the body are parallel. It's not flush with the body, but this is straight along with the body up here. Hopefully I'm putting this in an area where you can see it. I don't know. My video monitor is in the other room. But I want to make sure that this is pretty flat and parallel with the body. That's how you want this bridge to be set up at standard pitch, or whatever your standard pitch is. I do E, A, D, G, B, E. If you typically set these up for drop D or drop C sharp, or, E flat standard, D standard, you name it, whatever you want. You want that to be in line with the body. If it's not, that's where you would make your adjustments on the claw screws. Look at this. It's getting chaotic up in here. That's where you would adjust the claw screws, either in for tighter to bring it closer to the body, or out to bring it further away from the body. That's how you would adjust your claw screws back here. Let's go ahead and I'll do this because maybe I got it close enough. Here's how you can check that you have enough tuning left in the saddles for, or in the tuners, I guess, kind of one and the same. If I turn this guitar over, and if I look down in here, and I see that there isn't, like, that the ball end of that string isn't, like, really close to the end, then I've got enough. Then that should be plenty. B looks good. E is just a little bit too close for my personal comfort, so this is what I'm going to do. This is, again, roughly in tune. I'm just going to detune this one guy. E's always the one to kind of worry about probably the most. I'm not pulling this much out of that alignment. So now it's slack. It has been slicking. And I'm just going to pull it through. So it was slack. Now I have actually it tuned to where it is sounding a pitch, and that's going to give me more room for the tuner. So now... Okay, now, sight that bridge again. That bridge looks great. I love it. I'm still not going to touch these guys yet. I'm just going to make sure those are all roughly finger tight. And then, if you remember from my last one, the old stringed stretch is the best thing you can do when changing strings to fully seat the string, in this case, fully lock the string, and get all the excess stretch out so that your strings are, so that your strings don't have like a weak break-in period where they, you know, by the end of this stretch, they will mostly be playing ready. And then there might be a little bit of tuning that I might need to do on this tomorrow. And then after that, usually on a Strandberg, I don't have to really worry much about the tuning. I might have a couple little tweaks here and there, but then it's going to stay pretty well in tune. So there's one round. I'm trying to kind of remember what knee sounds like. I don't have perfect pitch, but I have a good relative pitch. This guitar is like crazy resonant despite its small size, so it's actually vibrating a lamp that I have over here. And let's do a second round of stretching. Like in my Jane Fonda videos. This is what happens. I'm doing a long video and I get bored and I say stupid jokes. In fact, my wife says that it's not a good idea for me to talk before 10 o'clock in the morning because that's when all my worst jokes are. They happen in the morning before 10, allegedly. Okay. Nothing is like slipping out of control, which is good. These seem to be pretty locked in place, so I am going to go ahead and snip these guys off now. Okay, now let's take a sip. And get squared away again, because that's honestly for that sort of thing, that's going to be much harder than anything that you will really need to do. Let's go ahead and grab this is the nut feeler gauge. We don't need to do that. Let's go ahead and grab the truss rod or the neck relief feeler gauge. And I'm going to get my string action gauge out here. And let's give this a little setup, see if we need some tweaks. Capo on the first fret, just like we did. Yes, you can still capo a Strandberg. And now, what this says, I'm going to do my two tests here. So, here's electric guitar, 6/1000ths of an inch. And hold down the 12th fret, and then slide this under the 6th fret, and it should just barely touch. And it does. It might even be just a little loose. Here's the other test. My test. Capo. And then 12th fret. Or I'm depressing the last fret on the fretboard, and then I'm going to go to the 12th fret. And I just want like a really tiny click. And I think that's pretty good. If I wanted to tighten this up a little bit more, I'm going to use my Strandberg truss rod key. Let me find this where this sits. I think that's actually the wrong one. Let me try this guy. Hey, we have a winner. There we go. So, 12th fret. There just might be... I might just tighten it up the slightest bit. So same sort of thing. I'm going to turn this to the right to tighten up the guitar a little bit. Kind of let it sit. Sometimes even you can just sort of flip this guy over and just give this a little help. Now, these aren't ever really going to need much adjustment because maple neck, baked maple, and carbon fiber reinforcement, there's not going to be much you need to do with these. That, to me, is perfect. Still a little click. And I'm going to loosen this up. I'm going to go back and just check it for tune again. And that's relatively close. That's close enough for our purposes here. And that is really good. Oh, yeah. So I guess thinner hex T thing, truss rod adjustment. Bigger one you could use down here for the tuners if you needed to, but I don't really need to. So first step of any sort of string action adjustment, make sure the neck relief is set where you want it. The other thing that I might do following that is I might go ahead and play just up and down at bare minimum the E strings and the both E strings, the low and high. Just to make sure that nothing is fretting out. And I'm not, but I feel like I might be getting close. So what I'm going to do is I'm also just going to loosen this back up just a little bit. Just a real small amount. Anytime you have a truss rod adjustment, small amounts make big differences. And big amounts make really big differences. Mostly your need for new guitar. So... and 6th fret again. Yeah, I think I kind of like that a little more. I just might be the type of guy that likes a little bit more relief than what they say. Just that small tweak can be the difference between almost buzzing and none at all. So, just so we're thorough on here, I'm probably feeling more like the acoustic guitar setting. This is 8th thou. Oh, you know what? I should do this from down here. Yeah. That's definitely a little bit more like rubbing the way that a feeler gauge probably should. Let me just double check this one again. Electric guitar. 12th fret. And yeah, that's definitely clearing here. Light touch, 6th fret, medium high. And low E string, 12th fret. Yeah, I think I just like maybe a little bit more relief. But that is touching very slightly. Anyway, you do want to make sure, first adjustment, you want to make sure that your neck is relieved in your preferred amount. It's not buzzing anywhere and all that stuff. Now, I'm going to do just a couple things, maybe out of order, maybe not. I'm going to take my radius gauge. Actually, probably this isn't really out of order. It's probably correct order. These are 20-inch radius. I'm going to take another little Post-it here. Thin little guy. And I'm going to put this 20-inch radius gauge about a 1/4 inch off of my saddles. And make sure that I have very little, if any, flatten this out a little bit, space from the radius gauge on the strings. E string is good. Both E strings are really good. They're not slipping at all. A is really good. D and G and B is real slight. So this is what I'm going to do. Loosen up D and G. You can do these together on the Berg. And now I'm going to raise these saddles up one turn. So I'm going to back these off. One turn. The Strandberg setup is one of detune, retune, detune, retune, detune, retune. Just the way it is. This is where this guy might actually come in handy. And good. Everything is looking good with the bridge still. Let's go ahead and put our 20-inch radius back on roughly a 1/4 inch away. And let's try E again. B. Yeah. There's just barely a little touch. And that feels pretty good. Let me just try this on the other side. 20-degree radius. So I think the D is one click too high. I'm going to back the D off. And this is what I mean where I say that because of the way that these saddles are designed, there's not like an infinite amount of adjustability. So I'm just going to tighten this in now by half a turn. Tighten it back up. And then go back to the 20-inch radius. Post it. Okay, and I feel really good about that. There's, like, if this was a feeler gauge, I'd be getting just a little bit of feeling on the B, G, and D, but then, like, really none anywhere else. You could probably also take the radius gauge and put it on all of these like this, but that's not always going to represent the true radius of the strings, so that's why I'm kind of putting that here. So, good. Radius is done. Let's take a look at action. Capo's going to go back on. And just going to check that adjustment one more time. I'm pretty sure I dialed it in, but sometimes you can't be too close. And sometimes the necks will move a bit. Yeah, I like that. Okay, this is back on. Now I'm going to take a look at the 12th fret with the string gauge here, the string action gauge, and I like to take a look at this on the 64th side. So I'm going to put this down and just see where my low E is. This looks like it's coming in right at 5/64ths. And maybe I should do this with a decimal. I always forget when I do this. I'm going to do this with the decimal points. So I'm going to redo this. Here's, let's see. And that's millimeters. Okay, yeah. Let me do this. Change my mind. So this looks like 0.7. This is a little bit high. This is reading at like a medium high, which I probably kind of like anyway. 0.7. And that's probably close to a 0.6. I think I am going to use, this is going to be the same truss rod adjustment. This one's going to go in here. I think I'm just going to lower this just a little bit on either side. And let's just see where these look now. I totally just hit my camera with my foot, so if things just shifted, you'll know why. That's probably about like 0.065, which is medium. And that's at about 0.6. I think I'm going to leave the high E just a little bit high so I can get my fingers underneath it. I'll try this out when I play it, but I think I'm going to go with that for right now. And this is kind of the advantage of a 2-point system where, like on my PRS DGT, I would have to adjust every single saddle to, you know, not only keep the radius, but also to raise the individual string height. 2-point is really simple. You just do this, do that, adjust it. The radius is already set. Bam, you're good to go. I really like that about this sort of system. Let's just go ahead and put this guy actually into the right slot here and just sort of do this a little bit back and forth. And everything looks good. This is still very parallel with the top of the guitar. I'm always going to be kind of watching out for that. Good. Let's flip this over. That's all like the playing setup stuff done. Let's go ahead and flip this over. Let's just clean up the electronics. And let me also find the cap to my Deoxit since it fell off. Okay. Go ahead and take a sip of your beverage if you got it. One thing I really like about Strandberg's is this cover is solid aluminum. And of course, it integrates the jack into it, which I think is a great design. It's not any of that flimsy plastic or anything. Maybe not quite as cool as, a guitar that has like a real wood panel on the back, like some of the private stock PRSs or something. But I like this aluminum. I think it's really cool. Again, this is like very utilitarian style of guitar. So let's just pop this up. Take a look and make sure that everyone's happy on the inside here. And I am going to take the deoxit. I'm going to spray in each pot. A little bit. Just a little spritz. And then in the tone pot. And then even on like the inside of the switch. Just a little bit there. And that should really be it. Now, while we're just in here, we can also see that we have copper shielding tape on the top of this. And then we also have what looks to be like black. This is probably like a black shield sort of paint. And then we have our ground wire going from the inside of the cavity soldered onto our back plate there. Let's go ahead and pop this guy back on. Our jack is covered by what looks like heat shrink as well, which is kind of a nice little addition, I suppose. And take our screws, go back in. Look how great that brass looks. Just my nerdiness popping out here. And Phillips head, tighten these guys back down. Just snug. Alder isn't a crazy hardwood, so you don't want to strip these out. The number of times I've added toothpicks or paper or other sort of media to screw holes. Sometimes like the strap button screw holes. Those are always the ones that these probably don't need to be tightened up, but I'm just sort of double checking. And yeah, these guys are just fine. On my guitars, on student guitars, the strap buttons always loosen up because guitars are typically made out of a softer wood than, like the tops. Like maple is a much harder, denser wood than, say, alder or mahogany, or ash in some particular cases. And, let's see, swamp ash, alder, basswood is really soft. So it's another popular guitar wood, body wood. But the amount of times that those screw holes have stripped out and you need to fill them in with something to get them to, hold the strap button again is insane. Okay, I'm just going to get these guys, get all that deoxit sort of in. Do the switch. I might even go this way into the switch as well, just a little bit. Get it all dispersed. Nice and even. Get around the extremes. Spend a lot of time around the extremes of the knobs because that's where a lot of the gunk builds up. Okay, now wipe this off. I'm going to do one more wipe. Let's go ahead and turn it over. And I did not do this in the beginning, so I'll do it now. Move this guy. This guy's just precariously hanging out there. Spray this down a little bit along the neck. Wipe it down, clean it up. Get all the grease and grime and stuff off of it. And then that is looking good. So next step, we're going to double check the intonation, make any adjustments that we deem necessary. And I'm going to head back over and do this again at my desktop. I will see you over there. All right, so I'm back here over at my desk here, and then just to sort of double check that all the electronic stuff is working, I'm just going to play a note. All that is really nice. And crackle free, which is good. Now, let me get back in tune, like real tune. I'm just a little bit, pro tip for retuning something that has a movable tailpiece. Go a little bit sharper than you typically would, just so it kind of equals out a little bit, and then we'll come back. See, we're kind of flat there now. But we're really not that far off. And notice when I'm tuning this back up, because I'm also on the thing that could be moving the string all over the place, is I'm letting it settle after I make an adjustment. And my hand is off the tuner while I'm looking for the tuning. All right, now let's see how my tape trick worked out. So, again, intonation, play the note. It's reading just a little bit sharp, 2.7 cents sharp. Play the harmonic. Play the note. And that's pretty sharp. I'm fretting it where I would be playing the note. I don't want to play it too loose. And even so, if I try to play it really loose, it's not even making like a good sound. So there's one that I need to adjust. Let's try for A. This one's -1. Harmonic. Again, -1. That one's close. I don't need to adjust that. That one's fine. At least at this point. Harmonic on D. -4. D might actually need to come up a little bit. Well, maybe not. -5, -4. -4. I think D's perfect. G. -1. -2. Kind of weird that the harmonic would be out of tune with the open string, but maybe. G's perfect. B. Isn't this exciting? It's exciting stuff right now. I think B's just fine. -2, -1, -2. I think at playing, that'll be okay. At playing pressure. -1, -1. Okay, great. So actually, tape trick worked pretty well. My E string is pretty offensive, though. So luckily, it is annoying. Like I said, I have to loosen the string, guess where it should go, and then tighten it back up and check it. But all those adjustments can be made with the multi-tool. So that is kind of nice. So I'm going to put in the back end of the multi-tool for the tuner, just so I can loosen this up enough to move that string. And again, this was reading sharp, so I need to lengthen the string a little bit more and get this to a point where I can get just back and loosen up this screw. Maybe a little bit more. Loosen it up a bit. Slide it back a bit. trying to make an educated guess. And then tighten it back down. You just make sure that's a full seat. And tighten it back up. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's also not the best. Tighten this back up to pitch. Resting right at around 0. See, I'm still about 5 cents sharp. So, wash, rinse, repeat. So I'm going to do this and get it set. That's the method. You know what to do. I'm going to adjust the intonation. Then we're going to listen to these 2 clips and see if that brass block is doing anything special other than being awesome. And we'll see. You can drop me a comment in the space below. And I will see you next time. Thank you for hanging out with me and doing this long video. Do this again. I think I actually want to go a little bit further down. Thanks for giving me some of your time on whatever day it is for you. But this is how to make all of the necessary adjustments for a player's setup with a Strandberg. It's a little more intense than what I was doing with my 594 the last time. But it's great to be able to do these things and not have to take your guitar to a tech. Techs are great. I love techs. But I want techs to be there for the stuff like frets and nut slots and those sorts of things. Let's try this one more time before we pan over to our trem block test. 1, 1, and we're settling. I'm going to go just a little bit more on this, and then I'll see you over at the test. Okay, now granted, I just put some new strings on, and these are brand spanking new. The other ones were older, not, completely dead, but older. But I do feel like the brass does add just a little bit of extra bigness. That could be just because I installed it now. I'll, I guess, have a better representation after a couple of months, after I play this a whole bunch. But right now, this is playing amazing. This is playing really, really, really nice. So I'm going to keep playing this guitar. You have a wonderful day. My name is Matthew Dale. I'm here to help you play better, sound great, and understand more. And I'll see you in the next video.